you are so pretty, 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 pretty. Baby girl, you are so pretty, 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 pretty. Females made you just to trick me, trick me, trick me, trick me. 'Cause baby girl, you are so easily pretty. The only reason that I can do tonight is 'cause I know you were invited. The only reason that this dress is can tight is 'cause I thought that you would like it. I'm only
Welcome to Jessica Javens Talk. I'm Jessica Javens, and if this is the first time that you're tuning in, welcome. Let me tell you a little bit about me. I was actually born and raised in Brazil, and I moved as a young adult to the United States with a dream, maybe perhaps the American dream. And pretty soon that universe of possibility started to become real. I met an amazing man that I married, and I adopted legally his 4 beautiful, gorgeous children. And I started to climb also on the corporate ladder until I became an executive. And wow, that was a dream come true. However, my body was telling me something different, and I had to start listening. I had about 80 pounds of stress, overweight on myself. I started having anxiety, 3 a.m. wake-ups, brain fog. My skin started having rashes, which dermatologists' creams would not work, and so many other symptoms. And it came to a breaking point. I had to do something about it. And I am so happy that I didn't give up on that, because I was able to find a strategy that actually worked for me, that helped with my mind, my nervous system, and my body. And today, my mission is to help as many people as I can and inspire them to do the same for themselves so they can be their best version yet. And I'm pretty sure that if it's not my story, there's other stories in season 1 or 2 that you will probably connect. If not, perhaps a future guest, or even better, today's guest. And I want to welcome, and please, you need to stick until the end so you understand why I'm saying this. I would love to welcome today the amazing Hiba Tanvir. Hiba, thank you so much for coming to our show.
Thank you, Jessica, for having me. What an honor.
Thank you so much. Hiba is the founder of HT Compassion. She's also a public speaker, an author. She's a leadership mentor, mindset coach, and she's also creator of the Play and Pause methodology for intelligent people who have some therapy fatigue. She's also an EQ strategist, and also, like me, a mother in leadership. So this is an awesome opportunity. So if you're a woman, you're a leader, you're middle-aged, oh my gosh, you need to stick to the end of the show. So Hiba, how did your own journey with emotional awareness begin? Tell us a little bit about that.
So, Jessica, since I was little, right, I remember being like 5, 6 years old, and I remember doodling the word zest in block letters everywhere as soon as I learned how to write. I did not even know what the word meant, like what 5 or 6-year-old knows what zest means. But I would doodle it everywhere, and obviously didn't think much of it, but I always knew that I was very sensitive and perceptive to the emotions of people around me. And as I, got older, I was also very peace loving, which meant that I was, that was always the mediator, the peacekeeper. And that was just, it went with who I was. I just liked peace. And then as I, obviously got older and I started my corporate career, I realized that it was one of the things that I was really commended on was my emotional maturity, my emotional strength, and also just being very regulated was a strength that I had. And I felt that the more I was living and the more personal experiences I gathered in my own life, I realized that being emotionally regulated is it's the backbone and the crux of everything that we do. And yet it's one of those things that we typically majorly learn just from our environment. So if you didn't have regulated people around you, especially your primary caregivers, humans are, we only self-soothe in relation to the people around us. We don't have any natural self-soothing or self-regulating abilities till we're much older. And so if your foundation in that is weak, it's hard. And, I think my exposure to that just kind of grew as I realized that if you can lend people your calm, you really do help them make better decisions. You help them feel more in control. You give them a sense of calm that they are clearly struggling with. And without being in a regulated state, Jessica, no learning, no growth, no transformation, nothing happens.
That makes so much sense. Thank you for saying that. Um, I'm thinking back about my own journey and how that fits in, and it makes perfect sense. What was the exact, if you can think of or remember, the exact pivotal moment that made you realize that you wanted this to be your career?
So, Jessica, it happened in spurts and kind of very organically, right? I kept getting, when I look back, a step closer to this. So when I was working in corporate, I was asked to mentor people a lot. So I was like, okay. And they said, oh, you really seem to get people. And I'm like, okay, didn't think much of it. And then during another transition period, I was moving back to Texas after, kind of working in corporate for 5 years. Um, when I was visiting India for the summer, I was fascinated by this idea that we're all energy beings. And so I did Korean hand therapy, and I got this certificate in that. So when I came back, I started doing workshops, and through that I found people that were starting to really, they wanted to come to me to kind of center them. So I'm like, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not your friend, and I'm not your doctor. I'm this in-between person, which I realized people really craved for. And we would do a lot of talking, a lot of sipping tea. I would do, depending on what it was, I would work, on their hands and, do a lot of what's called Korean hand therapy, which really helped. One woman that I particularly remember, my first lady, it was amazing, that I worked with. She had been taking 18 Tylenols a day because she had such bad migraines and nothing on earth had helped her. And she just said that her whole life was just trying to manage these migraines. And she was a young woman. And obviously I was very new. I was like, I don't even know what I can do if she's 18 Tylenols are not helping her. But we started working, and over time, Jessica, she was able to move down from 18 to 12 to 10. By the time we finished working over the course of a year and a half, she was down to 4. And she said to me, I cannot tell you, this has changed my life. She said, I stopped going out. I stopped meeting people. I hated doing things because I knew that when this would come on, I just didn't know what to do. So to me, being a source of alleviating someone's pain has always been something that gives me a lot of purpose. And then over the last few years, when I specialized into, kind of emotional intelligence and emotional regulation, it came from this experience that I had unfortunately, in my own life, where I realized that, when you take out the emotion and the pain from something, you realize what you're dealing with often is emotional dysregulation. And when people are emotionally dysregulated, you can't build homes with them, you can't build business with them, you can't build life with them, you can't build partnership with them. It's the most basic thing, and yet we don't view it as such. It seems like, okay, yeah, whatever, regulated,
Yeah.
what does that mean? So I think that really drew my interest, that it's a skill that's not taught, and yet it's the skill that is most needed if we want to build a better world.
Wow. That's a strong point right there. One of the most needed. Now, for our listeners here, can you just describe just briefly what is this certification that you got when you went to India, and that helped this maybe one of your first clients with it? Can you tell us how that works or what it looks like?
So basically, when I was in India, I saw that there was this, as I was driving by, I was like, oh, this looks interesting. This is a woman that teaches like acupuncture and acupressure. And I got interested. So I went to her and I was like, oh, what do you do? And she told me this would be like a 2-month program. And basically, I'd be teaching you different points on the hand and how they correlate to the rest of your body and what they can do in terms of opening up energy pathways, right? And so kind of the same idea as reflexology, the same ideas on our feet, we have kind of our body mapped
Yeah.
onto both. And so basically, I was like, sure, I'd be interested in learning this. And it was more like, sure, I want to be able to help my mom if she's, got something, or just but I think when I kind of was like, oh my gosh, this is powerful stuff, I can do more with it. So that's where I got this. I learned it. I did it for about 2 years, and then I kind of left it and moved on into our family business, which is we have our own preschool. And it wasn't until just about a few years back that I was like, wait a minute. I've got the energy healing. I've really gotten into neuroscience. I got my emotional intelligence certification. I've done resilience building from Harvard University. And I was like, when I piece it all together, I can create something that's based on ancient wisdom, as well as proven techniques, as well as neuroscience, as well as basic principles of emotional intelligence, which I thought was unique because most people don't have that. Kind of bringing it together to me was like, I can really help more people with this.
That's so beautiful. My goodness. And as far as the emotional intelligence part that you said is one of the biggest issues, I agree. Um, I believe that eventually, if you don't have that regulation, it takes you to burnout. What would you say are one of the first signs of burnout?
Being highly reactive when not needed and being highly non-reactive when needed. That's a
Oh,
strange thing, right? So
yeah.
let me explain. There are situations that God created us with this ability to, fight, flight, freeze, whatever, depending on the situation. So God forbid there's a fire, we should be trying to get away from it. Those are basic ways that we ensure our survival. I notice that when people are very burnt out, we become very numb, meaning we're not reacting to the stimuli the way we need to. So a small thing is causing a lot of big reaction and big feelings, and whereas things that actually call for it, you're almost not giving a response that would make sense. So that mismatch to me is a sign that someone is in burnout.
Wow. I do recall having those feelings. Now that you said it, probably never had it pinpointed like that, but now I do recall. I didn't know those were signs of burnout. That's amazing.
Do you know, Jessica, that one of the big things that drew me to my work in emotional intelligence, and specifically within emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, was realizing that I was working with more and more women, that we confuse numb with being calm. And that's a big myth that I want to debunk, that, we pride ourselves as women on, I was just so calm. I look back at my own life and I look at the fact that I kept praising myself for situations in which I was calm, in which I should have actually been either fighting or running away, but I commended myself on just how calm I was. Calm is not healthy if it's masking, if it's just a cover for numb, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. And would you say that a lot of us actually do that without even noticing it?
Oh, totally, totally. We're spending half our lives just like that without even
My
knowing it, because
gosh.
on the surface, we are calm. We are appearing to be very, very competent, very highly functional, but inside we're operating from serious emotional depletion. We are operating from this state of we're just going through the motions. And I really worry when I hear people say, because I've been there, oh, I'm just going through the motions. No, you're not supposed to be just going through the motions. You need to be going through the emotions.
Wow. I love that. You have to write that down. You should not be going through the motions. You should be going through the emotions. Wow. And that's true. People just don't know, I guess, how to regulate them. It comes down to that. So many times they're taught or influenced to just shut it down, which is not actually shutting it down because it's part of our composition. It's part of
Exactly.
humanity is to have it. So how are you going to just shut it down? Or even the most common word people probably use is suppress, right? It's not, it's very damaging. And over time, how that can become so many different illnesses. Like I was having some of those symptoms, you know what I'm saying? On my body. The body starts having to somehow process that. If you're not doing it the right way, it has to go somewhere.
True. And our body whispers. And if you don't listen, it'll have to keep speaking a little louder, but eventually it will get your attention.
That is so true. That is so true. And it's funny that sometimes it takes a person to have the body actually screaming for them to start doing something, and it's sad. And this is why the awareness and that we're bringing here is so important. Now, let me ask you this, Hiba. How do you see now the emotional intelligence intelligence in modern day. Things have been shifting very much, and you and I also spoke about and working together on with the transition in the modern world with AI. So how do you see emotional intelligence evolving alongside AI?
I think that we're living through a time of very rapid transformation, right? And there is, speed and just with AI, it's changed everything. And I think, and I believe that, at the heart of my work is this idea that in the artificial intelligence era, emotional intelligence is the real intelligence. And let me explain what I mean by that. For so long in history, we were told that we had to divorce emotions from intelligence. Emotional people are not intelligent, and intelligent people are not emotional.
Wow.
And basically that meant that we had cut out half of our brain, so to say. And in today's AI world, if you think about it, there is no better time in history than now to own and flaunt your humanness, because that is what is going to set you apart.
Wow. I got goosebumps right now.
But unfortunately, Jessica, for so long, we've been told to operate this way. And suddenly we're at a disadvantage because we don't know how to show up fully human, because that's considered maybe unprofessional, weak, too feminine, too masculine. Like, we don't know what to do with that. And I think that's exactly where, it's like we're almost teaching us how to be our most human self. And it's liberating, because you know what? Eventually we were meant to show up fully and wholly. And when you have to keep fragmenting and breaking parts of yourself, you're not being an honest representation of who you were meant to be. And also, you're not even your smartest self, right? So I think bringing emotional intelligence is bringing all your pieces together and realizing that your emotions have intelligence.
Oh my gosh, that is so beautiful. Our emotions have intelligence, absolutely. And the other part that I loved how you put it is there has never been a better time for us to do that. I was waiting for you to say something probably very negative. and and you said that, I'm like, she's right. She's right. This is a huge opportunity. And I think there's people starting to become a little more aware of how we've been losing a little bit of that humanity, and they're craving it. And I've seen even young generations literally choosing, maybe a few decades younger than me, choosing not to be on social media, choosing some drastic things because of the lack of humanity. I met somebody in their 20s that were like, no, we need to have meals with the family every single day. No phones. Like, this is crazy. I'm like, I was so proud to hear that, from a person at that age. And
Yeah.
I think they're just realizing that it's not a substitution, much to the opposite. It's an even bigger time for us to bring that awareness. Now, Hiba, how do you coach leaders to balance that vulnerability, right? Because we need to embrace that part of us
Uh,
with authority without compromising their confidence and credibility, and especially if you're talking about work.
Great question. And so through my own journey and having worked with leaders and teams, one of the things that I'm so proud that I was able to put together was the play and pause methodology, which is fundamentally bringing moments of play back into the way we lead, the way we work, the way we show up, and bringing the power of the pause back. We think of play, Jessica, and we think, okay, we don't have time for this because that's for kids. That's what we do when you're young. Like, we're serious people. We got work to do, right?
Right.
And that's exactly where we have it wrong. Play from the beginning of mankind has been a very important way of regulation, of growth, of connecting, of creating. Play is when we let our creativity just flow through us. Doing things without any performance metric is the key to play, right? We're not talking about playing a sport and then again it turns into this who won, who lost. It's doing something simple as doodling. When you're singing in the kitchen, when you're dancing, when you're, just having a fun, silly conversation with someone. Hey, tell me, what would you do if you were a dog? Just anything like that, right? You creating moments of micro play. which is so crucial to, again, realigning ourselves with our humanness and allowing us to kind of show up with that. And then on the other hand, there's the pause, right? And so during the course of, as I've been doing more workshops and trainings with leaders, I started with Play-Doh, and I realized that when I would walk into a room, that was my signature thing. I would put out
That's
Play-Doh,
awesome.
and you look at a bunch of CEOs looking at you like, okay, we don't have time for this. And I'm like, that's exactly what we need to make time for. Because, it's amazing, Jessica. And I see this whether I'm speaking to a group of CEOs, whether I'm speaking to a group of cybersecurity professionals, university students, a group of name any industry, I can tell you put Play-Doh in the room and you give it to people. And I guide them through what I want them to do with it. Literally, the energy of the room changes. From this, you
Wow.
see people going like this. Conversations happen, the facial expressions loosen, all the fancy things that we want people to feel comfortable, vulnerable, honest, blah, blah, blah. I make it happen. To me, like, you can't tell people what to do. You got to do it with them. And that's a key thing about the way I work is I feel like I've been on the other end where I'm a smart person. I know all these things. I know I should rest. I know I should hydrate better. I know I should, be calm. But the problem is we're also like lonely because even ChatGPT could tell me that, I want a human to be with me in this discomfort and in this space. So that's where I brought, the idea of play, and then I combined it with pause. And I really go deep into the pause because if I tell you to pause right now, okay, do I take a breath? Do I slap somebody? Do I throw a chair? Like, what do I do in this pause? Right? Like, no one tells us that. And so a lot of my work has also been focused on developing emotional intelligence curriculum for schools. Because I feel you want to start all of this very early, right? We're talking about it now, and we learned it after going through our share of trials and tribulations. I think as humans, our purpose is always going to be, what is the gift and what is it that you have learned? And how are you trying to share this with people to save them the pain, the agony, and the time that it took you to learn it?
Oh,
So this is kind of what I've created because I feel the play and pause put together allows leaders to be not compromising on productivity, but also not compromising on being authentic and leading from all of their intelligences, including emotional.
beautiful. Oh my gosh, I loved how you said that. Hiba, so you're also working with children.
I am. So my family and I, we have our own preschool, and that's kind of the background I come from. I've got over 20 years of early childhood education. That's where the Play-Doh was like, wait a minute, this is powerful.
What kind, so what are you doing? Are you preparing these children for leadership? Or emotional regulation from that age? What is your main focus?
So when I put together emotional intelligence curriculum, Jessica, my goal is that just the way we want our kids to know their numbers, their letters, their shapes, my goal is for them to have emotional literacy, for them to identify when they're sad, when they're mad, when they're worried, when they're frustrated. Because what happens? I believe that in today's world where we're seeing high rates of anxiety, depression, suicide, substance abuse, this is a proactive approach towards the global mental health crises. Before something turns into a mental health problem, it starts as an emotional health problem.
True.
So I'm obviously not a mental health professional, but I feel at this young age, by allowing them to get very comfortable understanding their emotions, we're giving them an edge to navigate this world by being more human.
How beautiful. How beautiful is that? What is the age that you start helping them with that?
So we start with them at about 3 years. 2, actually. 2 is where we start introducing it. So
Really?
yes, start at least getting them familiar. So the teachers are not just, it'll be like, oh, I'm so happy to see you. And when I feel happy, my stomach does this. Or are you, kind of helping them identify, are you feeling sad? What's going on? Why don't you draw for me like you're sad, or choose a color and draw for me like you're mad? Really focusing, and a lot of my work is working with parents as well as teachers, because again, they don't really know how to do this, right? It's uncomfortable for them because we're taught that our children should always be happy. Our goal as parents is not just to make sure our children are always happy, it's to allow them to feel a range of emotions responsibly and safely.
Oh my gosh. I cannot even say how valuable that is for parenting because we're we're not told much about how to parent through all of that. So most
Nope.
parents probably would benefit from that hugely. That should be in every curriculum. And hopefully we'll get there soon. Hiba, what is one emotional skill that makes the biggest difference in people's personal and professional relationships?
Do you mean like which emotion or which emotional skill?
Skill.
Skill. So between self-awareness, it starts with that, right? I have to be aware that I am feeling this. And that's the hard part. That's the deep dive into yourself. It's a lot easier for me to say, Jessica, when you do this, or if you wouldn't do XYZ, I wouldn't be mad. It's much easier to believe that it's always other people and things that are making me behave this way. It's a lot harder to realize that self-awareness piece, which is, I tend to behave this way, or I get triggered by these things. But self-awareness is that awareness piece. It's that deep inner reflection. Self-management is realizing that you are not responsible. You are only responsible for yourself. Meaning, self-awareness without self-management is basically a license to be obnoxious.
Oh, wow.
And we don't want to be that person, Jessica.
No.
In today's world, Insta is filled with have your boundaries clear. Don't let anyone blah, blah, blah. And it kind of encourages this narcissistic way of living where I am this. Well, just because I tell you that I am an angry person or I like my room clean, that's great. But what are you doing about it? You still need to figure out how you are going to manage when that doesn't happen. It's not your job to figure that out for me.
Right.
So I work on that part of you're self-aware. That's great. But if you're not going to have tools to manage whatever you have come up with in your self-awareness, you're dangerous. You're toxic because you're somewhere expecting the world to kind of dance around your issues.
I never heard it said that way. That's absolutely amazing. That's a light bulb. That's incredible. My goodness. Okay. So Hiba, if emotional intelligence had a superpower, this is something out of the box now. If emotional intelligence had a superpower, what would it be, or what would it look like?
If it had a superpower, it would be super kind and super productive.
Yeah, because there's nothing chaining you back, right? That's what I'm thinking visually, because you're able to perform the best and to be kind and free. Yeah, I love that. Kind and productive. I love that. That's beautiful. That's how it should feel. Absolutely. And man, that impacts everything. Yourself and everybody around you.
Exactly.
Right? Amazing. Before we start closing with the last question, I just want to pause for a moment just to thank some of our sponsors for today's show. First is Purium, which is the ultimate life transformation company that helps you to reset, cleanse, and give your cell level pure nutrition, organic nutrition. And also Forever Living, which is the best aloe vera juice in the world. And if you ever come to South Florida to visit my brother's restaurant, which is absolutely beautiful, was just on Local 10 last week. It's called Through the Vine. So thank you for our sponsors today. And going back to Hiba, we have a lot of people watching this show right now. And I want to ask you, what is the one key after they turn this off and they go right back into their routine, probably their patterns? What can they take away and they can start practicing right now that will help them to get closer to their self-awareness and their emotional management?
Pause. If you can just introduce a pause, and the secret to that is how to pause, which I talk about in my workshops. But if you can take 90 seconds before you decide to reply to that email, before you decide to say something back to your partner who's triggered you, before you decide to say something to your teenager who's, pressing your buttons, just pause and just let that emotion pass. It really changes the landscape and the terrain of your, dynamics.
Thank you. That's so practical, and it makes sense. And you're giving yourself that opportunity, and also the people who are going to be listening to your response. So thank you. Now, Hiba, you have so much going on. You have so many, a unique combination of talents and ways that you're impacting people today in the world. Tell us how our listeners can reach out to you, understand a little bit more about your work, and work with you. How can they get to you?
So HT, which are my initials, htcompassion.com is my website. So you'll get a good idea of what I do. And then there's a way to connect with me on there. I'm also on LinkedIn, my first name, Hiba, and Tanvir. That's another way. And yeah, I just would love the opportunity to kind of really show you what owning your emotions can do for you professionally, as well as how it changes how you show up at home. So it's really a game changer, because your same emotions come to work and the same emotions go home. So when you invest in your emotional intelligence, it's really the best investment you can make in your relational health, in your physical health, in your career health. It really is that super kind of starter for everything else. So yeah, through my website and through LinkedIn, I'm also on Instagram at HD Compassion. So I'd love a good chat.
That's awesome. I was just going to say that as you started to tell us how to find you, is one of the biggest gifts that you can give yourself, or maybe somebody else, is to do that self-investment and discovery and that power that we all have inside of us. We just have to allow and give permission to get ourselves there, and the feeling and the consequences of how that impacts everything in your life is just so huge. And today is funny because, of course, this episode is going to be on air for a long time, but it is Valentine's Day, and some people are thinking about flowers and chocolates, but really, you want a good gift is to invest in yourself in this level. There's probably nothing better than that. So thank you so much, Hiba, for coming to the show. I love your work. I love how you post your inspirational things that you share on LinkedIn and everything. I love following you. And I look forward working with you more moving forward. Make sure that you guys are following Hiba, and also make sure that you're sharing this episode, because there's so many people that need this. They need to understand and get out of feeling imprisoned with their emotions. There is a way out, and there's a beautiful way out. And this is the best time to do it right now. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you for watching. This show is brought by the I Am Beast Network. This is Jessica Javens Talk, and my name is Jessica Javens.
Baby girl, you are so pretty, 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 pretty. Baby girl, you are so pretty, 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 pretty. Females made you just to trick me, trick me, trick me, trick me. 'Cause baby girl, you are so easy, baby.